Okay.
Here is the audience. Okay. So on an article from the World of Paleontology entitled Beyond the Grave, Burial, and the Human Condition in Deep Time, paleontologists found in northern Spain's mountains the fossils that made up about 28 individuals of the species Homo heidelbergensis, which is a common ancestor of both Neanderthals and humans. And the reason why they find this significant is because they believe that these individuals were buried intentionally in this place. One of the main artifacts being a handmade hand axe that they thought was put symbolically there with them. And this kind of brings the question of, this ancient ancestor intentionally buried their dead, and we do that also. And why do we do that? And the answer is that it helps us emotionally get over the death of somebody who's very important to us, which also brings up the topic of death and how it's very important to us, and mainly talked about in this very negative way, but it's also very positive, where it makes us think about the people around us who are important to us and how they impacted our lives. In addition, it gives us an end point to our lives and makes everything more important, because why would we do anything if we just have an endless amount of time to do it? However, I would argue that this topic is only really talked about negatively, and which causes us to kind of not want to talk about it at all. In an Iowa State University textbook entitled Emotions and Attitudes Related to Death, the authors cite that people don't talk about this topic unless they really need to, i.e. if somebody they loved has died, is about to die, or if you yourself are about to die. It's seen as this elephant in the room. And also, in a survey that I gave my classmates, I asked how frequently they thought about death, with 1 being the least amount, not at all, and 5 being most frequently. And three quarters answered a 3 or higher, which means that we're thinking about death a lot, or most of us are, yet we don't talk about it. And that also brings up the question, does this impact us negatively? And I would argue that it does. So I would like to talk about in this speech how you could attain a more neutral view of death, because I think mainly we think about it negatively, and also steps to take in order to gain this neutral view. This problem, I think, is pretty widespread, and also I think it impacts us negatively. I think it forms a kind of phobia. There's actually a name for it. It's called thanatophobia, which is called a fear of death. And it manifests itself like any other phobia, where there's rumination, a lot of racing thoughts, and it causes us to avoid it. And I would say that this also takes a toll on our agency. It makes us make decisions that aren't taken as they should, because we're fearing death. We could see this in a study done in Frontiers in Psychology in 2025, where they studied elderly patients with chronic illnesses, and the ones that were able to work through their fear of death then were able to take treatment as they should, while the ones who weren't able to work through this did not take treatment as they should and did not take the steps they could to work through their chronic illnesses. I think this highlights the bigger picture, where it's either fight or flight. So we either freeze and aren't able to deal with the emotions as we should, or you fight it and you come to terms with it. I also think that this is a very widespread problem. I think that we could see this with how many people believe in the afterlife, because if we're thinking about the afterlife, it also highlights how important death is, because we see it as this significant problem in our lives, or this significant point in our lives. So we wonder, is all of this worth it if it all leads up to this? And it also highlights this hope that we have that yes, it does, and that we are leading to this life after death. We could see that this is significant in a study done by the Pew Research Center in 2025 via text to adults in 36 countries, in which in most of the countries, the majority of the population did believe in life after death. I would say that we could take steps to correct this very negative view that we have through the ways that we deal with other types of phobias, which is the main thing being kind of facing it, but that's hard to do with death because you can't just die and get over it. You have to keep on living. And so I would say one of the main things is meditation, which is basically just, in its simpler terms, being able to sit with your own thoughts. If you're not able to sit with your own thoughts, obviously that leads to you running away from the problem. And obviously take it with a grain of salt, because also taking that too far can lead to other problems. We know that just being able to sit with your thoughts too long can lead to you going insane. But also I think you have to evaluate how you think about death and also how you think about it, because I think that the language you use surrounding anything affects how you think about it and vice versa. I came up with a plan of 3 steps in order to work through these thoughts. The first one being, again, evaluating how you think about death. Just asking yourself questions like, do I only really use negative adjectives with it? Do I avoid talking about it with the people that I love? Does this affect me negatively? Does it affect my relationships, and why? Do I see it as this elephant in the room? Does this affect me negatively? Why? I would think also the next step you could take is maybe just 5 minutes a day trying to practice some type of meditation. You could do, you could look up on YouTube just videos to help you through it, or you could just sit with your own thoughts, journal. I also think that this helps with other problems that you have in your life, and just being able to work through these fears. And I think the third thing that you could do is talk with loved ones and broach the topic of death, the elephant in the room. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a negative conversation. It could just be hypotheticals. Would you rather be cremated or buried? What type of funeral would you like to have? Have you ever had a near-death experience? Because I think, in addition, it just helps you get to know these people in a way that you aren't necessarily doing now, because we like to avoid this subject so much. And I think using this plan, or also just in any way that you would like to, working through negative emotions that you may have about death, can lead you to ultimately having more agency in your life, because you're able to make decisions more meaningfully. And if you choose not to, I think it leads to a life of more regret, because you're just kind of living life out of fear, which, as we know, does not lead to the most positive experiences. And I think altogether this is a significant problem and it should be addressed. And I think the problem is highlighted best in a song that I've been listening to recently from an artist called Cameron Winter. He recently released a debut solo album entitled Heavy Metal, and in the last track, Can't Keep Anything, he says, dying and dying, and dying and dying, you used up your grave. Which I think takes this very existential, big problem and just sums it down to, you have 2 choices. You could choose to just see life as dying, just agonizingly slowly, or you could choose to see it as, this is a gift that I'm given every day, I get to live. And I think external factors make this choice harder. However, it is just simply that you get to choose either one or the other. So I hope this speech has helped you make this decision more meaningfully. Okay, perfect. Oh wait, I didn't show it at the end.